Hey guys, in this video we're going to be creating a movie listings application using JavaScript jQuery and an HTTP client called Axios. Alright, so before we look at the actual app, let's take a look at the API we'll be using. This is the OMDb API, and I believe they get all their data from the IMDb website, but basically we can just make a simple request to this URL right here. We don't need any authentication or anything, and it'll give us back a bunch of movies. So basically we can search by ID or title, or we can search by string in the search box. Okay, and we're going to be using both. And then the client we're going to use is called Axios. I've used this in a few tutorials before. Now you can install this using npm or bower if you want, but we're just going to include the script tag because everything is going to be on the client side here. Alright, and then to make a request we can just do axios.get, put the URL in, and get the response and output it how we want. Okay, so that's what we'll be building. Let's go ahead and take a look at the app. So basically we just search for something, let's say the word home, and we click enter. It's going to send a request out to the API and bring back all those movies that match that query. Okay, so on this page we have just the cover or the poster, and then the title, and then if we click movie details, what it does is it sets the ID in session storage, and then we make another request to the API searching for the movie by ID, and we get all this data back, and we format it using Bootstrap. Alright, and then we just have a button down here if we want to look at the movie on IMDb, or we can go back to the search. So very simple, but for the amount of code that we're going to write, which is very minimal, it actually gives us quite a bit of functionality. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up my text editor. I'm using Atom, and for a server I'm using Live Server, which you can grab from npm. That will run a server, will run your application on port 8080 by default. I'm just going to stop that now. Alright, and then we're going to create a project folder. So I have a folder called projects and then a folder called JS, and that's where I'm going to create this project. So let's call it movie info. And we're only going to need a couple files here, so let's create the index.html. Okay, we're also going to need a movie.html. That's going to be the single movie page. And then we'll create a folder called CSS, and let's create a folder called JS. Alright, and then in CSS we're going to have a style sheet, so we'll create a file called style.css. And in the JavaScript, let's create a new file called main.js. Alright, so let's open this up in Atom, or whatever your text editor is. Let's see, projects, JS, movie info. Alright, so now we have our file structure, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to install Live Server if you want to use that, but you can use any server you want. You could even run it from your file system. So let's see, let's make this a little bigger, and I'm going to go into projects, JS, and movie info, and you're going to want to install Live Server globally so that you can run it from anywhere. So to do that you need to have Node.js installed, and I'm on Linux, so I'm using sudo npm install -g live server. Okay, and that will get it installed for you. And then it's as simple as running the command live server from whatever directory you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. We'll say live-server, and that's going to open it up on port 8080. Okay, so let's open up index.html, and let's put some standard HTML tags in here. I'll make this bigger. Okay, for a title we'll just say movie info, and we're going to use Bootstrap for this, and I'm going to use a customized version at bootswatch. Okay, so let's just grab this cyborg. I'm going to click download and just grab this link. Okay, and we'll put that in here, and this will be style sheet, and we'll paste that in. Alright, so now we have our Bootstrap linked. We're also going to link our custom style sheet. So that's style sheet. href is going to be css/style.css. Okay, so there's our head data. Now for the HTML, I'm just going to paste this in. So I'm going to paste the nav bar in just because it's kind of a waste of time to type it out. Most of you guys probably know what's going on here. We just have a nav tag with the navbar class, navbar default, then we have a container to contain it into the middle, and then we have the navbar header, and then the brand, which is, I guess, the logo, and it's linked to index.html. Alright, then we're going to have a Jumbotron area, or a showcase area with the search form. So I'm going to paste that in. We just have a container, then a class of Jumbotron in H3 with the class of text center, and then we have our form, which has the ID of search form. Okay, that's what we'll use to grab onto it. And then we have one input type text. We have the ID of search text. Make sure you put that ID in there, and then just a placeholder. Alright, and then under that, we're going to have a div with the class of container. And this is where we're going to have our output. So basically we just need a placeholder here because everything's going to get generated through JavaScript. So let's give it an ID of movies, and I'm also going to give it a class of row because we're going to be using the grid system, and close that up. Okay, so now we need to include our script tags at the bottom. We need to grab jQuery. So let's grab the minified version. So I'll just copy this script tag. Whoops. And let's put that right in there. Alright, we're also going to need the Axios client. So let's just search for Axios npm. Click on that, and then we're going to grab this script tag right here. And like I said, you can install it using Bower or npm if you want, but we're just doing this the easy way. And then we just need to include our script. So source, and that's going to be main.js. Alright, so that should be it for the markup. Let's go ahead and save that, and we'll go back to our site here. And now we have our layout for the home page. Okay, so now we're going to go to our main.js file, and first thing we want to do is we want to catch a submission of this form, and then we want to take the value and then call a function called getMovies, which will reach out to the API. Alright, so let's go to our main.js and let's put in here document.ready. We're using jQuery, and I'm going to use arrow functions just to keep it ES6. So we're going to put an empty set of parentheses there, and then an arrow, and then our brackets. Okay, so you could just as well do function. Okay, you could just as well do that, but we're going to stick to the arrow functions. Alright, so just to make sure that this is loading, let's do an alert 1. Save that. And this should live reload. I'm not sure why it's not. Whoops, what's going on here? Let's open up the console and failed to load resource. What did I do? Script source main.js. Huh. What the hell's going on? Oh, I didn't put the JS in front of main.js. There we go. Alright, so now it's going to live reload. Good. And I'm just going to put the console at the bottom. Whoops. At the bottom. Okay, sorry about that. So what we want to do is create an event here for when the form is submitted. So let's say ID search form, and we want to say .on, okay, because we want to listen for an event, and we want to listen for submit, and then we're going to have our callback in the form of an arrow function, and pass along the event so that we can do e.prevent default, because that's going to stop the form from actually submitting to a file. Alright, and then let's do a console.log just to test this out, and we're going to get search text, I believe we use for the ID. That should have a hashtag right there. So search text, and then we want the value, so we're going to use .val. So that should log whatever we put in here. Okay, and you can see it's getting logged down here. Alright, so what I want to do is put that value into a variable. So let's say let search text equals, get rid of this last parentheses here. Alright, so we're putting that in a value, and then we want to call a function called getMovies. Alright, and that's going to be passed in the search text. Okay, so we'll create that function down here. And let's test that out. We're going to pass in our search text parameter, and then we'll do console.log search text. Alright, so let's say test and enter, so we know that that function is being called. Alright, so this is where we want to make our request to the API. So we're going to use Axios here, and we're going to say axios.get, and we'll put the URL, which is http, and it's going to be www.omdb API.com, and then we want to add a parameter, so we put the question mark and then s equals, and then whatever we want to search for. So we want to search for this text, whatever's passed in. So right here we're just going to concatenate search text. Alright, and then this is going to return a promise, I believe, so we got to use .then. Yeah, we'll say .then, and then in here we want to put a function, so I'll use an arrow, and that's going to give us a response. Okay, and then here we can say .catch in case there's any errors, and in here we'll put an arrow as well, and that's going to give us an error if there is one, and we'll just console log that. Okay, so if we get the data, everything goes okay, this will run. If there's an error, this will run. So let's go ahead and we'll console log the response just to see what happens, what we get. And let's save that. Alright, so let's search for the word home. And you can see down here, it gave us an object, and we want to look inside of data and then inside of search, and that's going to have all the different objects, okay, all the different results. Now since we did the S parameter, it's only giving us some information, but then when we go into the individual page for the movie, we're going to make another request using the ID, which will give us more stuff. But all we need from here really is the title and the poster. Okay, so since this is inside data and then search, what I'm going to do is set a variable here. We'll leave that, and we'll say let movies equals the response, and then we want to go into data and then into search. Alright, and that's going to put that array into this variable. So now that we have that, we want to get our output ready. So let's say let output, and we're going to set that to nothing for now, because what we need to do is loop through this array and then append each movie onto this variable, and then after we do that, we'll output it all onto the screen. So let's use a jQuery each loop here to iterate through each movie. So in here we're going to say movies, passing in that array, and then we're going to do an arrow function, and this is going to take index and then the data, which I'll call movie. Alright, so now in here we should be able to access each movie, and what we're going to do is add it to this output variable. So if we say output plus equals, because we want to append this, and then I'm going to use backticks right here, not quotes. That way we can use multiple lines. Okay, this is actually a template string, and we can include variables as well. Alright, so in here let's put a div, give it a class of callMD3, because we're going to have 3 column divs. Alright, and then inside here let's create another div with the class of well, and also text center, because I want everything aligned to the middle. Alright, and then we'll put an H5, and that's going to have the movie title. Now when we want to use a variable, we use the money sign and then these curly braces. So in here we want to put the title, So we're going to use movie.title, and I want to put the image above it. So let's say image source equals, and then in here we'll do movie.poster. Okay, and I'm getting these from here. You'll see if we look here, we have the title and the poster, and they're uppercased as well. Alright, and then we just want a link under that, so we're going to put an A tag here, and let's give it an onClick event. Okay, we're going to say onClick, and it's going to call a function called movie selected. Alright, and then we're going to pass in the IMDb ID. Jesus, that's a mouthful. So we want to put movie.imdb ID, and I'm getting that from right here. Okay, and that actually has to be in quotes, or it'll actually look at that as a variable. Okay, it'll look at the ID itself as a variable. Alright, and we want to give this a class of btn and btn primary, and let's just give it an href and put a number sign in there, and then the text will say movie details. Okay, so now that we have our output created, we need to actually output it onto the screen. So if you remember, in the index file we have a div with the ID of movies, so we're going to use that. Alright, so make sure you go outside of the each loop, and then we're going to say jQuery and movies.html, and then pass in the output. Alright, so let's save that. And now if we make a search here, let's say home, and we get all of our movies. Now by default this doesn't look very good, so what we want to do is make these images within 100% of their element, and I'm also going to set a height for these. Alright, so let's go into our style CSS. Alright, and let's see, from here let's say ID, movies, and we're also going to have an ID of movie for the single pages. So actually we just want the image from both of these. Okay, so the image, we're going to set a width of 100% of its container, and you'll see that will shrink them down. Alright, let's also set a height for these. You see how some are bigger than others? We can make that look a little better by saying movies, and then we want the call MD3, and then the well class. Okay, and we're going to set a height of 390 pixels. I also want to set a height for the images themselves, so let's say movies.call MD3 image, and let's set a height of 240 pixels. Okay, so now these are all the same size. I mean, this title has 3 lines, so it kind of moves it down a little more, but that's fine. Alright, now if I go and I stretch this down, I want to make this responsive, and that's not very responsive as far as the images. So I want to remove the height restriction if it's at a certain point, if it's below 960 pixels. So I'm going to wrap these in a media query. So we can say media, and just wrap both of these. Alright, and then in here we're going to set a min width of 960 pixels. So this will only be in effect if it's lower than 960 pixels. Alright, so now when you view it on a mobile device, it looks fine. Okay, and we go back up and we have the height restriction. Alright, so that's it for this page. Now we want to work on the movie.html file. So let's go into that, and I'm going to copy everything we have in index and then put that into movie. Alright, and we're going to keep the nav bar, but we're going to get rid of this whole Jumbotron section. And then in this container right here, we're just going to change this to movie, and we're going to give it a class of well. Alright, and that's going to be our placeholder for the individual movie. All right, now when this page opens, we want it to run a function called getMovie. So down here, we're just going to add a script tag, and let's run getMovie. And that's all we have to do for this file. So let's save that, and then let's go back to main.js. Whoops. All right, now remember, when we click a single movie, it's going to call a function called movieSelected, and we haven't created that yet. So let's do that now. So movieSelected, and that's going to take in an ID. All right, and the way that we're going to pass data from one page to another is through local session storage, which is very similar to local storage, except it clears out when your browser's closed. So to save the ID, let's say session storage dot set item, and we're going to set an item called movie ID and set it to that ID value. All right, then we want to change the page because we want to go to the movie.html file. So let's say window.location equals movie.html. All right, and then we're going to return false. So let's save that, and we'll type in home and click details, and it sets the storage. It says getMovie isn't defined because we haven't created that yet. But if we look in our application tab here and go to session storage, you'll see we have the movie ID stored. All right, so we can then access that in the getMovie function, all right, which we'll create now. So let's go down here and say function getMovie. All right, and we want to get the movie ID from local storage. So let's create a variable and set that to session storage dot get item, and we want to get the item that is called movie ID. All right, then we want to make another request using Axios. So I'm going to grab this whole request that we did up here, okay, down to here, and copy, and let's paste that in here. And we just want to change this S to a T, not a T, an I, because we're searching by ID now. Okay, so this is going to be movie ID. And then let's get rid of all of this for now. All of that. And let's just console log our response just to make sure that we're actually getting it. Alright, so let's save that. And then it reloaded, and you can see what we get as a response. If we look in data, that's our object that has all that stuff in it. Alright, so we want to put that as our variable here. So let's actually, we'll leave the response, and then we'll say let movie equals response dot data. Yeah, data, lowercase d. Alright, so now what we want to do is create our output for this page, just like we did above. Now we don't have to do a loop because it's just one object. It's not an array like we had with all the movies. Alright, so let's go ahead and create, let's see, we're going to create an output variable and set that to some backticks so that we can use a template string. And let's create a div, give it a class of, actually I think we already have the row class, yeah, right here. That's where it's going to be, whoop, that's not right. Movie.html. Oh no, we don't have the row class, so we have to do that here. Alright, and then we're going to have a 4-column div. So call MD4, and an 8-column div. Alright, and we're going to have our image in the 4-column div, so image source, and let's set that to movie.poster. Alright, and I'm also going to give this a class of thumbnail. Okay, save that. And oh, we didn't output it yet. We have more markup to put here, but I just want to test it. So down here, let's say we want to grab the ID of movie, and then say .html, and we want to pass in the output. Alright, so now we have the image. Okay, so on this side, on the 8 column, we want to put, let's see, we want to put the title first of all in an H2. So movie.title, and then we're going to put a list group, which is a bootstrap element. Okay, and then we're going to have LIs with the class of list group item. And in here, let's put genre, and then we'll set movie.genre. And let's actually put the labels in strong tags. Alright, so we're going to copy this, paste that in a bunch of times. So we'll also have released. Set that to released. And what else? Rated. We can put the IMDb rating. Okay, that's going to be in IMDb rating, right? And let's see, the director. The writer. And the actors. Alright. And then we're going to have another row under this div. Alright, and in here let's put a div with the class of well. And let's put the we're going to put an H3 and say plot. And then we want to put movie.plot. And then let's put an HR under that. And then we want the two links or the two buttons, so href and whoop. And this is going to go to http imdb.com/title/ and then the ID. Okay, let's make that open in a new window and give it a class of btn and btn primary. Alright, and this is going to say view IMDb. Alright, then we're going to have another link that's just going to go to index.html. We'll give it a class of btn and btn default. And that'll say go back to search. Alright, save that. And there we go. Let's make sure that works. Yep. And we can go back to search. Alright, let's say we want to search for Blade. Get all these movies, and we can look at the details. Awesome. So that's going to be it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I might actually turn this into a hybrid mobile app by using something like PhoneGap or Cordova, because it's something that is contained, and we could do that. We could put it in a web view for a mobile app. So it's something that I may do because I'm working on a mobile course now for Eduonics, but I'm not sure yet. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you're not, and thanks for watching.